being here tonight. I'm going to go ahead and get us going. Okay, so this is a little agenda about where we're going. So we're going to spend about the first 20 minutes, and this is going to be a little off time-wise, but we do have a good chunk of time tonight. But we're going to start off with the context. Basically, why are we here? What is the background of the bill that was introduced today by Nevada Senator Catherine Cortez Masto? So we'll talk a little bit about some of the context that's needed to better understand today and why this bill is so harmful, and why it's really important that communities, not just in Nevada, but across the country, ensure that we are pushing back, especially to our elected representatives, to let them know that this bill is unacceptable. So we'll be going a little bit into that. After that, we'll hear from some other folks who are either directly impacted or who are close to the issue, to get some more nuance and other perspective of what's at stake, and when CCM says that she wants to reform the 1872 mining law, for example, what that's on the backs of, and who all of the voices that she's ignoring when she wants to implement a bill like this. And then we really use the last chunk of this hour for Q&A, and we definitely want to hear from folks whatever questions they may have on any of the issues that we're talking about today. So that is a little bit about where we are going, and then we'll close out with some next steps and other ways that you can stay involved and stay engaged and make sure that you can help us fight back on this issue and fight for communities on the front lines of extraction instead of the mining industry continuing to get their way. Okay, and I also, I didn't want to move too far forward without acknowledging for all of the folks who are working against extractive industries and for justice for people who are on the front lines of extraction. I just want to acknowledge the Dan sisters and the Western Shoshone peoples in particular, who have really paved the way, and the legacy that they have left, particularly here in so-called Nevada, when it comes to fighting extractive projects and fighting power and industry. So I just wanted to acknowledge that this work is not, unfortunately, this work is not new, and we are all following the legacies laid before us by some really powerful, incredible human beings, particularly the Dan sisters and many other Indigenous activists, land defenders, water protectors in so-called Nevada. Okay, let me make this. Okay. So we're going to start with a little mining 101. Nevada, well, mining is rooted in colonialism and settler colonialism. So when we think of mining in the West, it's really hard. It's impossible to separate it from the reality of colonial violence and westward expansion. Those two things are just like intricately connected. And not only that, but that fact that we operate under a 151-year-old mining law, that's the 1872 General Mining Law, also reminds us of that. So we are operating under a federal law that was written when mining was done more what we might call today like artisanally. So it was done with pickaxes. It was not the industrial scale that mining is today. And for decades now, mining has been an industrial level endeavor. Start this part over again because it is really important, but just wanted to like root us in the fact that when we think about mining, we also can't separate that from settler colonialism. And a constant reminder of that reality is the 1872 General Mining Law, which is a federal mining law that is 151 years old this coming May 10th. And so an example that I wanted to give of why this is so outdated, not only because it was created during settler colonialism, but also because of the impact that mining has now and how much that impact has really transformed over time. So instead of mining with pickaxes, we are mining with massive scale infrastructure and equipment. We are like, the mining industry is moving a ton of earth, and because of that, the 1872 mining law really doesn't make sense, and activists and advocates have been saying this for decades. And so an example of that I would think I was getting into where we left off was, so this mining truck, it's actually like a smaller, relatively smaller truck, because the mine, the Marigold mine up in Elko County is a relatively smaller gold mine, but you can see it's pretty massive. And not only is it massive, this is just one truck, but this one truck holds 44,000 gallons of water. And there's multiple of these trucks going around at all hours of the day, 24/7, 365 days a week, only for dust suppression. So this is one way, one of the relatively smaller ways that the industry uses water, and just kind of shows at even a smaller scale the impact that mining has in places and on our water systems, and that the 1872 mining law is pretty absurd when we think about it in this context. Another perspective is that one truck, and this is just in, again, at this specific like kind of case study, the Marigold mine in Elko, it burns through 58 gallons of diesel gas every single hour. And y'all, the mining industry does not stop. Like, they're going all the time, every hour, every day of the year. And so then another thing we have to consider is that we have this mining law and practices that have changed and transformed, but are still rooted in settler colonialism. And then now we fast forward to today, and the minerals that they're saying are required for renewable energy technology. So that's things like nickel, copper, lithium, cobalt. We have the statistic here on the screen where the majority of those reserves and resources here in the United States are located within 35 miles of Native American reservations. And so that is another reason why this basically business as usual is not going to allow us to do any kind of just transition, because business as usual is rooted in all of these horrible things that are in desperate need of reform and attention. And so just want to, I feel like that was a good place to start to kind of get a better understanding of where we're coming from here. Erica, you can go to the next slide. And so I've been talking about the 1872 General Mining Law. Again, it is a federal law. And these are some of the highlights, or really where most of us have critiques of this outdated law. So basically, the 1872 mining law gives so-called public land to the industry for free. The mining industry pays $0 in royalties. And even the fossil fuel industry pays royalties. They have taken somewhere in the ballpark of $300 billion in minerals and paid the public $0 for extracting that earth from land that is supposed to be public. There's no requirements in 1872 mining law for reclamation. And what that basically means is that the industry is not required to clean up their mess. And that is showcased in the fact that we have somewhere around 500,000 abandoned mines across the United States. And there are varied estimated costs of what it would cost taxpayers to clean this up. And I believe the most recent number I saw was actually upwards of $80 billion. Another critique of 1872 is that it's just simply undemocratic. There is really very limited public participation. Industry can go in, stake a claim, put like $3 down per acre or whatever it is, and ultimately, and that's it. They get first and prior land use, like above all other land uses. They're number one in line, and that's even the case for folks out there who maybe are interested in renewable energy siting, realizing that mining still would take priority over things like that. Recreation, conservation, mining is first in line. And generally, there's just been a consistent lack of transparency from the industry. And what we're going to go in today will also highlight the fact that this law has basically continued to benefit the industry to the detriment of people and the planet. And now that this law is being interpreted slightly differently in a way that doesn't benefit them as much, now they want to change it. And so this is a little context of 1872. Erica, you can, actually, before you go, if you didn't already, Oh, it's okay. Okay, thank you. I forgot to just address the background photo here. So this is John Hatter and Cassandra Lisenby. They're partners from Great Basin Resource Watch who do a lot of amazing work in Nevada around mining. And this is one of the Marigold mining trucks. And you can see Cassandra is holding her hands up to kind of show like how small she is compared to just one of those tires. I mean, this is an industrial scale endeavor and it needs reform needs to address how detrimental the industry is now. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So I'm curious what folks think when they think about the mining industry in Nevada, and I would like welcome folks to put in the chat like things that they think of. These are some of the things I think of. Mining really does touch everything, and so some of the things on here, we might immediately think of extraction. It is an extractive industry. We live in a world where our economy is rooted in extractive projects. It is rooted, like I've mentioned earlier, in racism, xenophobia. Pollution, I think, is probably one that does come to mind for a lot of people, but there's also things like we might not think so much about, like birth defects or cancer, or even things like police brutality. There's a lot of ways that mining touches all of us that we might not even realize. And today, what we are going to really zone in more on is corporate impunity and the fact that the mining industry kind of just, I mean, essentially gets away with murder in so many ways, and how a lot of elected officials will do the bidding for this industry over the people. And so that is more of what we'll be focusing on today, but I just wanted folks to know that mining touches all of these other things. So if there's other things on this little flyer here of words that you are like, oh wait, I really care about that. Oh, I never realized that mining might also touch this issue of air pollution, or I didn't realize that mining was a multinational corporation endeavor, or that there was no community consent, or all of these other things. Just keep that in mind, is that today we are focusing more on corporate impunity, but mining touches and impacts people's lives in a dramatic ways. And you can go to the next slide. Thanks, Gary. I'll send it to you. And so like I was saying, mining touches everything. And this is like not even an exhaustive list, but I would just recommend that if there is something on here that you're like, wait, I really care about that, please, let's talk more about it. Let's talk more about your concerns about public health and how that is intricately tied to public health. And again, today we're going to mostly focus on this issue of corporate impunity and democracy, protection from corporate capture, but please know that all of these things are connected. And that is why mining touches all of them. And then just for a side note in the background, again, it's another picture of Marigold Mine. You can see like the shelving. Each of those is about 50 feet. I tried to point, if you look in the lower right-hand corner, I tried to point a little arrow that says this is a person for scale. I mean, this isn't even like a huge mine. So this is the amount of earth that is being moved all of the time at multiple mines across Nevada and across the world. So this is kind of what we're up against here. Okay, you can go to the next slide, Erica. Okay, so we're gonna get into it. This is kind of a wordy slide, so I apologize, but I wanted to make sure that for folks who maybe just wanted to screenshot and come back to it, or they maybe better process information just reading it themselves, it was just the information was out there and more accessible. So the reason that we're here today is for all of the reasons that I have already stated. This legacy, this toxic ongoing legacy of the mining industry, it's rooted in colonialism, and it is an outdated law that benefits the mining industry. And advocates have been trying to reform this law for decades to benefit people on the planet. So that is what we're sitting in. And then the most recent happening, which was extremely historic, was what we call the Rosemont decision. And the Rosemont decision really begins to unravel the reality of corporate impunity as it relates to the mining industry. So there is, I think honestly, for as long as I've been alive, basically like 30 years or so, the Rosemont copper mine has been a proposed mine by Hudbay Minerals in Arizona. It's about 30 miles, I believe, east of Tucson, Arizona. It would be in the eastern, it's been proposed to be in the eastern slopes of the Santa Rita Mountains, which are considered sacred land, and also cultural. It's area where different tribes are utilizing it and connecting with that space. And so it's been a diverse coalition that has been fighting against this mine for decades. That includes the Tohono O'odham Nation, the Pasca Yaqui and Hopi tribes, and then also other allied nonprofit organizations and quite a few people. I mean, that's like a whole nother webinar, but I just want to shout out the folks who have been fighting the Rosemont copper mine, because it is a really good example of people power and what it takes to go up against the mining industry, especially because Hudbay Minerals is a Canadian company. They are a multinational company. And as a side note, there is a proposed copper mine here in Nevada as well, in the Smith Valley. And I don't know, I think Leslie, you're on here, but if you want to throw in Citizens to Protect Smith Valley's website in there, please do in the chat. I would encourage folks to follow that. But so yeah, so that is where this Rosemont decision is coming out of, this decades-long fight over this proposed copper mine. So in 2019, something extremely historic happened. A US District Court judge, James Soto, he challenged the status quo by interpreting the mining law in a way that it had not been interpreted previously. And so basically, what happens is when a mining company is staking a claim for land that they want to mine, they are, according to the 1872 mining law, they are supposed to do what's called like validating these claims. And for a claim to be valid, what that essentially means is that there needs to be proof that there's valuable or profitable minerals below the surface of that land that they're staking claim to. And what has been happening for forever, up until 2019, really, at least in this specific Rosemont case, is that the mining industry was saying, okay, we're doing all these stakes, we're claiming all this land, and it's public land, should be public land. But remember, because of 1872, the mining industry is able to be first in line to use that public land. So they stake their claims, and they go through this entire process, which is also another webinar. And what they are supposed to do is prove that their claims are valid. And so historically, state agencies have really just assumed that the mining industry's claims are valid. And in some ways that makes sense, because obviously a mining industry isn't going to put all of this money to dig up all of this earth if it's not going to be very profitable for them. So in terms of so if we think about their plan of operations, where they're just saying that they're going to put the pit, where they're digging up the earth, we can assume that those claims are valid, because obviously we know that they care the most about their profit. That's what they only care about. And so because of that, we can assume it's probably safe to assume that those claims are valid. However, the mining industry isn't just digging up stuff and profiting from it. They're also acquiring a ridiculous amount of waste rock. And so what they do, part of their plan is not just to dig up the earth, but also they have to create a place, they have to plan out a place where they're going to put all this waste rock. And so that they say, oh, well, we're going to put this waste rock on some of this public land that we claimed. And so what we're all kind of questioning is, wait a minute, they're going to dump all this waste rock on land that's supposed to have profitable or valuable minerals under it? That doesn't really make any sense, does it? Why would they do that? Because we know the mining industry and their bottom line, they want to dig up whatever they can to make a profit. So that's essentially the crux of this decision. The judge basically said, wait a minute, in the areas where you all are proposing to dump all your crap and all your waste forever, mind you, forever, this waste will be there forever and seep into the ground and the groundwater and into the air and whatever other ways that this, depending on the location of the mine, how this would cause pollution to the area. They're saying, wait a minute, this isn't right. You just want to dump your waste here then. You haven't proved that there's valuable there's valuable minerals under this earth. So in 2019, that is basically what this judge said. This judge said, actually, 1872 says you have to prove that your claims are valid. And the industry had not been proving that their claims are valid. And so I hope I did an okay job of explaining that, but please feel free to ask questions. And so this is a really good example of how it just shows that essentially the mining industry has been illegally dumping their toxic waste on public land since 1872. And so in 2022, what ended up happening was the Ninth Circuit Court upheld this 2019 ruling, and this effectively, for the time being, did stop the Rosemont copper mine. There is another layer here that, of course, Hudbay has lots of money, and it should show you how much money the mining industry has, that they have been trying to put this copper mine in for like 30 years. I mean, the amount of money that they have at their disposal is disgusting. So that's just another side note to keep in mind. So this is the precedent. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about the Rosemont decision. And this decision is still rooted in the reality of the 1872 mining law. And it just has happened to benefit communities and the planet, because it says, wait a minute, you can't dump your waste wherever you want. And so what ends up happening actually just this year is that this precedent begins benefiting other lawsuits related to this corporate impunity side of mining injustices. So we saw it in February 2023, kind of in a half-assed way, I would say, to be honest with you. So Judge Due, instead of saying basically like you kind of have to go back and start everything over, she basically said, oh, Lithium Nevada, you can still start your project, but you can simultaneously have to address this issue of valid mine claims and where you want to put your waste rock. So that was a little bit different of an outcome, but it still is enabling the legal cases around the proposed Thacker Pass mine to go forward. And so what I want people to keep in mind is that this bill that Catherine Cortez Masto is introducing seeks to undo this Rosemont decision. And so what that would mean for the proposed Thacker Pass lithium mine and the litigation that is challenging it, it would basically eliminate the ability for the folks who are challenging this mine under this Rosemont decision. It would make everything go away. And so it is a direct threat to the litigation surrounding the proposed Thacker Pass lithium mine, which means it's a direct threat to the communities who are on the front lines of this proposed extraction that has already begun. And you'll hear some more about that immediately after this. And then the second project that just in the last couple weeks was the Mount Hope project. And so to put this in a little more like perspective, we see that this Rosemont decision has already begun to benefit communities who are on the front lines of extraction, not in a full, it's not necessarily stopping all of the mines, but it's showing some benefit, and it is challenging just the power that the industry has had so far. And as soon as this happens, I mean, it only took 3 mines and the industry is rushing in to do damage control. And so I just want us to sit with that a little bit too, to realize that as soon as the industry is being challenged, as soon as they no longer get to get their way, they are rushing to our elected officials to do their bidding and to come out against a community who's impacted. Okay, let me go to the next slide. Okay, so I want to do a little pause for questions. I feel like it was a lot of information. I don't know. Let me see if I can keep up with the chat. Okay, yeah, I see. No accountability, wild west mentality. Yes. Chemical dust pellets in the water too, probably. Okay, yeah, I don't know if anyone has any questions. I see some comments. And I think, Mary, how do you plan to have the laws changed? So we'll talk a little bit about that right now. That's kind of what we're getting into, of like, what can we do? So we'll definitely answer that as we go, I think. Okay, we can go forward. Okay, so the bill was, I don't think we still even have language, but Senator Catherine Cortez Masto's communications people, her office did release a press release this morning, as did some of the other co-sponsors. And I think Cassie and Erica, if you want to drop that release in the chat for folks, if you want to put it aside later and read it for yourself. But so CCM, Catherine Cortez Masto, is introducing it with an Idaho Republican senator, and it's also co-sponsored with our other Nevada Senator, Jackie Rosen, Arizona Senator Kirsten Sinema, and then another senator from Idaho. And so in the AP Press, an AP Press article, which has been circulating in multiple state and local medias as well, CCM tells the press about the Rosemont decision, quote, "This misguided decision would force all mining activities, even the storage of waste, to happen on mineral-rich land, which could impede critical mineral production all across the country," end quote. Notice that she says absolutely nothing about the fact that the mining industry has been illegally dumping their waste on public land this entire time. She says nothing about the fact that her constituents, that a lot of the people who have been advocating for mining reform for decades are actually her constituents here in Nevada. And so what this quote tells me is that her intentions, and she's siding right now with the mining industry, and it's to all of our detriment, particularly to the detriment of Indigenous communities who are mostly on the front lines of these projects. And so it's important to think about undoing this Rosemont decision basically means that the industry just wants to follow the rules that they had been following for themselves, that they made for themselves. And so now they want to kind of put it in writing that, no, the way we've been doing it, this illegal way, we want to keep doing it and we don't want you to challenge us. And we need to sit with the fact that it really would give way more freedom to the mining industry to use land that is supposed to be public just for dumping their waste. And it's like not a small amount of waste, y'all. Like it is like thousands of acres being used to dump a significant amount of horrible toxic chemicals. Something that Cassandra from Great Basin Resource Watch reminded me of in the chat earlier, which is that a nuance that I kind of glossed over, and I want to make sure that we don't gloss over it, is that this proposed legislation from CCM, it doesn't matter if it's mining waste, like the Rosemont decision is specifically around waste. And not only would this legislation seek to undo that decision and let the industry dump their waste wherever they want, but it basically would ensure that they don't need to have any valid mining claims anywhere. And so that just means like we would be giving their public land to them for free, and all they have to do on their end is file a little bit of paperwork and a small filing fee, and they get to have access to this land regardless of mineral deposits being present. And so just want to make sure that folks realize that too. And I appreciate you, Cassandra, for catching that I didn't go into that. So I'll pause for questions again. You know how much mining money she's taken before this? That is a great question. I believe that she is second in line for taking the most money of any, I don't know if it's any senator. Yeah, I think of any senator, she's second in line for taking the most money from an extractive industry. I don't know, Olivia, if you want to put the more correct stat in the chat if you have it, but I believe that is, I mean, she's up there. It's not a secret. So it's another thing I might want to add is like, it's not a secret to a lot of folks who have been organizing in Nevada for a long time that CCM is pretty cozy with the mining industry. So most of us were not super surprised, and it just reminds us though why we really need to push her and really all come together to say this is completely unacceptable. Okay, we can go to the next one. Okay, and I'm going to pass it to Gary McKinney. Gary is a member of People of Red Mountain, and Gary, I'll let you introduce yourself. And yeah, if you want to, I don't know if you want to come off camera, but don't feel like you have to.
All right, it's good right here the way it is. Um, Hello, everybody. My name is Gary McKinney. I'm a committee member for Atakuraku Wanua. That's the people of Red Mountain. We descend from what we know in the articles today as the September 12th, 1865 massacre. Um, yeah, this. We've been fighting the Stacker Pass mine away from litigation through grassroots maneuverings and through the people spreading awareness about the negative impacts of what Thacker Pass really is going to be bringing to the table. And on the ground, I say these things in a good way, and I had seen or read a question earlier about what can we do to help. What I'm about to tell you, it's part of the narrative of us, as Northern Nevada indigenous people, now being surrounded by mining projects and being approached in sideways fashion. And, you know, I say this, to bring you all, make you all aware, coming from on the ground, of what the negative impacts altogether. It says protect Pihimua Thacker Pass, but it's actually bigger than that. We're fighting for the McDermott Caldera and other locations here in northern Nevada, southeast Oregon, and southwest Idaho. We are um, Paiute Shoshones, and the original inhabitants of the land were the Paiute Shoshones and Bannocks. And we talk about the timeline. The number one year that always comes up when we talk about mining is 1872. That's see 7 years from the day of our march to Yakima. And these stories that you're hearing are orally told within our communities, within our people, and those knowledge keepers aren't necessarily chair people, chairmen, chairwomen on the council. So where we're at today, is fighting. How this is not working for us is we're fighting this big system with its baby sister system, and it's obviously posing different obstacles for us. But following the simple teachings and things, not complicating our lives with these kinds of things, we fall back to those simple teachings, where we respect Mother Earth and speaking on behalf of the ancestors and those who were before us, that we are we're considered stewards of the land. We have an understanding that Father Sky, Mother Earth created a balance, and that's us. And as human beings, there are some of us on the ground over here in northern Nevada that wouldn't take $1 million from these mines. It doesn't matter how much money they offer or what kind of tokens they want to give. It being knowledgeable about our history, about where our people are, the things we did, where we were, where we went, and why we ended up going to those places. If our tribal leaders aren't savvy or knowledgeable or intelligent enough, or they don't have the initiative or the backbone to stand up for our cultural history, we're in trouble. And so that brings up, power to the people. That's the way that all these systems are set up to, quote unquote, help us. And by us sitting around twiddling our thumbs, thinking that it's not going to be happening to us or in our backyard, boom, it's going to happen. And the more awareness that we give, the more we narrate what's going on to our relatives, the better off our future generations are, because we're fighting this system with its baby sister system, and it's not working. And so let me tell you about the dreams, not the nightmares. You know, we come with you know, with the prayer, and it's a extension of the prayer that was said by our ancestors all those decades ago. And so, you know, today honoring that commitment, you know, to protect Mother Earth, and to know and to make it our business to know as much as we need to know about the other guys to bring it back to our people. And that's how we help our communities. We instead of focusing on these you know, Kai Shinabi, you know, backwards thinking people, fork tongue, you know, they the way that they're doing things is it's not good. It's not good. And you know, I skipped over what I was about to say. I'll come back to it, I promise. You know, it's been a long day, been a long year, whatever. But anyways, you know what I'm gonna say. You know what, if you hear something that I'm telling you and it rings a bell, write about it. You know, I'm telling you through indigenous eyes, in honor of our brother. You know, uh, initials MD. You know, we believe that together, you know, we could make changes. But we have to start teaching that to our little ones. We have to start teaching how to be good human beings, how to look out for each other, you know, how to look after our animals, how to look after our four-leggeds, you know, because we weren't always on reservations. And so, you know, where were we before now, before this? So that's where we are. You know, we're there at that spot. You know, these borders, these boundaries and things, you know, they're here to keep us corralled up. And that's the way they had it set up for us indigenous people. So we're you know, we really believe that, you know, the people are pre-existing relationships with these other bands of Indians, you know, rekindling those things. And what I want to say, you know, is we have a hard time understanding and interpreting what these mining companies are telling us, and it's been that way with our ancestors and their descendants since 1872. And so, what Sarah has mentioned about, you know, you know, we call it generational trauma, or you know, this lateral violence on our people, you know, and not giving a not giving us the rights, not giving us, you know, the proper acknowledgement, you know, or respect. And what we're seeing now is you all are getting a taste of what it's like to be an Indian today. You know, by not being heard, by not being, you know, you're wondering what can we do, how can we help, you know. And again, you know, we go to our vision, you know, we go to our the foresight that we have, which is today, right now, what can we do, you know. So a few weeks ago, we just got done with the prayer horse ride. And you know, like to us the pukus, you know, the horses are strong medicine for our people. And you know, our people were runners, we had runners, I'm a runner. And so these prayer runs or walks or rides that we do, you know, this specific one we did this year was a really good turnout. And you know, the invitation's there for you to come in a good way, and to come and see what's on the land, you know, walk with us as we go through the homelands, and see what the creeks look like today. And then we document, and then we see, you know, well, they're lying to us. These agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency, they're not here to protect us, they're here to soften the blow. You know, I come from Duck Valley Indian Reservation, and you can go on Google right now and you know, look up cancer clusters in Oahe Combined Schools, and it's gonna blow your mind. They really are lying to us. They really are. And so that's what we're seeing with this green energy transition is what they want us to hear, what they want us to see. But when we get on the ground, we get off the road and we start walking and we see what the negative impacts of these mining industries are doing over time. You know, we start to gain the understanding that all right, we need to start teaching ourselves how to be hydrologists. We got to start teaching ourselves how to take the initiative and do our own surveys and test the water, test our rivers, test our creeks, test our springs, because that's ours, all of us. It was never supposed to be this way, where you know, geez, what's next? You know, these guys out at Thacker Pass, those workers, you know, Jonathan Evans, you know, we not once did he ever come in front of us and say anything at all. Not once did Deb Howland step up and come out to us and see, you know, these politicians in power, you know, they work for us. And all it's gonna take is for us to go out and make this discussion, make this a hot topic, and we write about it. Submit these articles, these opinion pieces to your local paper. Send them to these other states' local papers. You know, if I can do it, you can. And so that's a way that we're tipping the scales, and you know, with the people. You know, we can never lose. You know, and I think at this point, you know, it's coming together as human beings to protect what is free. Because if we're not careful, we're going to be paying for everything with more than money. And you know, it's today, right now is the day we got to start saying no. And as I said, you know, if there's anything that strikes your nerve or rings your bell, write about it. Make, you know, just knock out a couple paragraphs and submit that to your local paper. You know, those things bring awareness, and that's how, you know, we're gonna bring ourselves up to speed, because this, you know, it happened already in South America. You know, it's happening in South Africa. It's happening in these other places, other countries. So let's not let it happen to us. Let's not let it happen to Nevada. Let's not let Nevada become a wasteland because these political, you know, these state legislators that say, you know, they care. They're bought off. Tell you straight up, they're bought off. It don't matter if we see the funds or not. You know, I'll say this too. You know, Wall Street bought out environmental justice in the state of Nevada. Wall Street bought out environmental justice in the state of Nevada. You know, that's the sad truth. So what did we learn? What do we know now? And how can we use that to make this a positive thing? And you know, out here, our communities, our indigenous communities are broken. I mean that like in a soft way, not like, you know, broken to pieces, but you know, there's disconnect there. And what we've seen while doing this per horse ride, you know, is the yearning for healing, the all this pain and suffering. You call it oppression. You know, it's there on our communities, indigenous communities. And you know, if these tribal governments were down with us, if they were down for us, if they were willing to step up and put in some work, you know, say no. That's how you know, I think that what the positive thing that we were able to see with the prayer horse ride, you know, was the seven generations, the younger folks that were watching, that were learning, and you know, seeing what they need to do for the future. Because you know, the older folks are focused on money. They're focused on making these agreements and keeping their jobs, and you know, that talk, that mambo jambo. But we're not paid to do this. We're not paid to get cancer either. And so, you know, we didn't ask for any of this contamination. We didn't approve it. You know, consultation is not consent. You know, all these things, you know, these are all human rights violations. And highlight that human rights violations. We all have rights to clean air and clean water. And so, something that we should all do is write that, connect these dots between human rights violations, lithium mining, and existing abandoned mines in the area, especially northern Nevada. My mom was enrolled here at the Fort McDermott Paiute Shoshone Reservation. There's an abandoned mercury mine nearby. My dad was an enrolled member of the Duck Valley Shoshone Paiute. There's an abandoned mercury or copper mine nearby. And where's the EPA? And so, these I need to say these things like this to each of you. I need to say it this way because you can't unring a bell. I don't want to sit here and make it seem nice and pretty. I'm grassroots. I'm a res boy, and so I'm gonna tell you what I know. We've been getting cancer there from these abandoned mines, both on my mom's res and my dad's res, both in northern Nevada. Both have ties to EPA, both have ties to the state legislation, and we need your help, people. We need you to back us up, and believe us, that there's cancer present already in this in the water, and a lithium project like Thacker Pass compounds the issue. It adds to abandoned mines. It adds to the issue, and we have to live by the reclamation. Reclamation's not pretty. Look at the picture there that was just up was when we went to the Anaconda mine, and it's these mistakes that they say won't happen. They do happen. Mistakes happen. We all know that, and it's catching, not necessarily catching, but holding accountability to these people who are elected officials to work for us. So we have to come together as people and put our minds together and write something out. I think, and hold accountability to these state legislators. Use Oahe, use the Environmental Protection Agency, use that issue in my hometown to help you. Use the abandoned Cordero Mercury mine. Use Rio Tinto copper mine. Use those things and tell the state legislation that we're dying out here because they want money, because they want to keep their jobs. They're not saying anything. They're not protecting us. So it's time for them to remove themselves, or we need to start. We need a place where we all can go, and I think we're working on that with the prayer horse ride. We have a lot of land, a lot of ancestral homeland out there. The Bureau of Land Management is one thing, but you can't take the blood and the sweat off of that land from our ancestors. You just can't. And so that's why it's really important that I say these things like this this evening, and I'm gonna stress again, if you hear anything that rings a bell, write about it and send it to your local paper. I'll be doing the same. I'm gonna be busy for the next few days. But yeah, this I want to talk a little bit about when Thacker Pass comes up and MMIW come up in the same sentence. Tie it into these massacres, because that's where it actually really happened. It started for us with these massacres, settlement, colonization, mining. When miners start coming out here in 49 on up, they start pushing the natives off of their ancestral homelands, which is now being mined on. So yeah, I think I'm kind of all over the place. It's like I said before, it's been a long day, been a long week, been a long year, but it's whatever. um yeah, I I think my time is about up. I might get off and think of other things to say. So if there are any questions or anything, leave it there, and I'll do my best to get an answer.
Thank you so much, Gary. I really appreciate your time. I know that you have had a bit of a crazy day. So appreciate you being here and sharing all that with everybody, and all the emphasis that you put on people power and Indigenous rights. So thanks for being you. I see, let's see. There are some questions in the chat, or yeah, if you want to answer them, Gary. Somebody did ask what was going on at Pihimaha today. I don't know if you want to answer that briefly. But I also want to acknowledge that when you did say, like, one of your asks that you repeated was, if there's something that strikes a nerve, tickles your fancy, write about it. I actually think that's a really good segue into who's speaking after you too. So I just wanted to acknowledge that too. But if you want to answer what was going on at Pihimaha today or what has been going on, feel free.
Yeah, I could address a little bit. I know it's been kind of a frenzy on social media today in regards to Thacker Pass. But Protect Pihimaha, we have other sacred sites out there, and that's really what we're focused on is the big picture. What you've seen today on social media came from those who are on litigation, and so that was a direct action that they had put forth. They did the effort. We have a little bit different protocols for things, because we're not showing up in violence. We're not showing up praying for those things. We're showing up with our drums and with those things like that. And so today was just a simple direct action. There's nobody there right now, so I wouldn't go out there if you don't know what the other side of the story is. I told you what I know, but as far as the future and what's going to happen, just continue to support, Protect Pihimaha and the protection of the Thacker Pass. And yeah, those are the two titles that were given, or we know as that lithium location. Protect Pihimaha is it's a Paiute name. That's where we descend from. So that's Ataqudaqua Winua is Protect Pihimaha. Litigation would be Protect Thacker Pass. And so yeah, it don't stop. We weren't a part of any of that direct action today. We were there. We sang our Protect Pihimaha song, and we sang the AIM song and some other Sundance songs, like we usually do. And we had other business to do in the area, so we went and took care of that. But yeah, if it's not coming from Protect Pihimaha, it's not indigenous. Aho.
Thank you very much for that, Gary. Much appreciation to you. In the vein of what Gary was saying about suggestions for how to raise more awareness and speak out about this and challenge the narratives that we have around mining, particularly here in Nevada, I am going to introduce Nathaniel. Nathaniel, I'll really let you introduce yourself, but one of the things Nathaniel, actually, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that was Nathaniel, sorry, next slide. Nathaniel has done many things and does many things, and is an amazing human. But one of the things that Nathaniel did was exactly what Gary is asking of everyone else. It's like something is happening, something is striking a nerve, write about it, call it out, make people aware of it. And so with that, I will pass it to you, Nathaniel.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Can I have a host please enable my video? I'm not going to have my camera on the whole time, but at least to say hi.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, and now I'm the co-host. Wow. Thank you so much. Greetings to everyone, to family, relatives, community, chosen family, chosen community. I'm grateful to be invited to share just a little bit during this community call. And I also want to commend the folks who have spoken before me, Gary and Sarah, for giving a really good presentation and really grounding and setting the stage for what is a really important conversation. that's going to continue, and it's going to keep going. Oh gosh, they're sharing my article. So I guess I'll start from right there then. Why did I write the article? It's been a while now, but Plan and people of Red Mountain convened a forum of some community leaders. Gary happened to be in attendance, of course, at the Plan office some time ago, because upon the news of hearing that the Nevada Mining Association was doing outreach in the historic west side of Las Vegas, which the historic west side of Las Vegas was the historically segregated part of Las Vegas that African-American residents, Black residents, were forced to live in before desegregation. The Nevada Mining Association happens to be, which is a great, I guess, something to be lauded, at the same time to be very much criticized, and we have to be critical and stay woke about. The president of the Nevada Mining Association, Tyree, it is their first president who happens to be Black in the history of this association. And this is the association that represents what is the most profitable and, as I just said to the legislature, mining industry-friendly state in the union in Nevada. So why is the Mining Association recruiting in the West Side and other quote unquote diverse communities? Well, because they recognize the importance of diversity in their workplace. We can give them that argument perhaps. Maybe they even want to extend good jobs, what they call good jobs, to folks across the state, but we can see right through it, right? We can see that it's whatever you want to call it, brown washing, whatever color, pink washing, green washing. We see that at the same time that mining is facing more resistance, local resistance and pushback in our state than I think it has perhaps ever seen, with the passage of the tax, not a just or fair tax on mining, but with the passage of a tax on mining and some accountability around mining, you see the association using tactics like this. So Plan convened folks at their office to talk about the shared reality between specifically Black folks in the historic West Side and Indigenous folks from across the state, and particularly around Pyramid Lake and the people of Red Mountain, and how our liberation is inherently linked. So if I'm a Black radical activist and revolutionary, then I understand that my own liberation is intimately tied with the liberation of other oppressed peoples. And of course, that my own ancestral history of kidnapping and enslavement of my ancestors on these shores, on Turtle Island, is also intimately tied up with settler colonialism and the erasure of Indigenous people across the continent and the theft of their land. Black folks may have built this continent, as they say, and it was stolen from other folks. So as Sarah grounded us at the beginning, this is about colonialism. This is about settler colonialism. These are still ongoing, dynamic, active systems and systems of power to this day operating around us right now. So that's why it was important to ground our solidarity as Mass Liberation Project and radical Black organizers with the liberation and freedom of both land and peoples across Nevada. And I don't know how much time I've been speaking so far, so maybe someone can put that in the chat. I'm gonna go off.
You can take some more time, go ahead.
Yeah, sure, of course. I have a couple more things. I'm gonna go off video now because I have a nice background and it is actually from Pahimaha. And then I'll be even less nervous once my video's off. Thank you. So Yesenia Moya, Jovan Jackson, and myself from Mass Liberation traveled up to Pahimaha and were able to stay a couple nights and just really be in community and meet with meet with Gary, meet with family, and engage or witness and engage or participate, I should say, and be witness to ceremony, which was the most beautiful part of that experience. Learning about the land from the people who have stewarded it and are desperately fighting to continue doing so. I think Gary can speak to anything you want to hear about Pahimaha, but it is incredibly important that, again, folks from urban areas, and most folks live in Clark County, so most of the state lives here. It is ultimately going to be up to us, in partnership and following and in constructive solidarity with folks on the ground and directly impacted communities and Gary and the people of Red Mountain. But it's going to take us. It's going to take folks who are not impacted by mining on a daily basis or hardly ever have to think about it to show up. And I don't know if our movement to protect these lands and to protect sovereignty, as the Black liberation struggle, it takes transnational revolutionary solidarity. It's going to take the same thing here. Erica, if you had a chance to queue up those pictures, I can send them in the chat. I just wanted to share the last two things I wanted to say is talking about escalation and what Senator Cortez's, that's okay, I'll drop the pictures in the chat, what the senator's move means for democracy and for public policy. So Nevada is often called we are an extractive colony for the entire nation. Most of our state is owned by the federal government, and then mining companies on the Bureau of Land Management have their way with it. And we are happy to sell off public lands and leave lakes of toxic water in pit lakes across our state. So why it's so important to push back against Catherine is because we have to take a stand for the principles of sovereignty and for, let's be honest, true and real democracy. So but two of our representatives, both Stephen Horsford has voted against mining companies having to pay royalties for doing their work on federal lands. Catherine Cortez Masto also led the effort, along with Republican Joe Manchin, to block federal mining royalties, which would have brought over $100 million to Nevada, if whatever I said in my article is accurate. So that's one point. And then it's also a point of what are we going to take as a people and as a state? Are we going to let our representatives deny the will of the people, deny the dignity and the rights of not only Nevada citizens, but also tribal citizens? So we have to think of it that way, and we also have to think of it in international terms, because the scramble for what she is calling critical minerals really reflects other scrambles of periods before. It reminds me of the scramble for Africa, when colonial powers in Europe split up the continent of Africa to pillage it of its resources, both human and other natural resources, and particularly mining. It reminds me of the scramble for uranium mining, for nuclear testing, which I'm going to mention and close out with in just a minute, because that is directly about Nevada. And so now this is another worldwide colonial global scramble and continuation of capitalism, the dominance of capitalism and of white supremacy. So right now in New York City, Indigenous leaders are at the UN fighting and advocating so that free and informed consent, I think I have the acronym wrong, but actually becomes binding law in this scramble for critical minerals across the globe. That's happening right now, for instance. So that's really important to be aware of. And the last two things I'll say is, in Nevada, we have resisted, or one brilliant example and powerful example of Indigenous resistance and transnational solidarity. It goes and it ties into directly to Plan's history too, is resistance at the Nevada test site during the nuclear age, and when over 1,000 nuclear tests, above ground nuclear tests, were deployed in what is Western Shoshone land. So this land was illegally seized, kidnapped. The Manhattan Project is what the federal government started the project to test nuclear energy in Nevada, not far from where I'm speaking right here. When the bombs would go off, we could see the mushroom cloud from where I'm sitting at my window, perhaps. And it took people like, people from all over the world came to the Nevada test site. We know that leaders and of Plan and great allies of Plan, like Rebecca Solnit, Bob Fulkerson, have protested. Folks have been arrested at this test site in solidarity with Indigenous folks and for a peace around the globe. The actor Martin Sheen, I think that's his name, was arrested there. So why is that similar to today? These critical minerals represent, the mining of critical minerals represent a existential threat to the health and safety of the planet, and certainly to Indigenous peoples in the midst of ongoing genocide and settler colonialism. So from that nuclear testing in Nevada, I just learned yesterday, and this is the last thing I just learned yesterday, a story of a dissident from the former Soviet Union and, from Kazakhstan, lived in a community where the former USSR also tested nuclear plants, or tested nuclear bombs. And they started a movement based off of their solidarity with the Western Shoshone. Folks from this community, thousands of miles away in Kazakhstan, came to Nevada and stood up for both global peace and Indigenous rights. So it's literally called the Nevada Movement in Kazakhstan to resist both mining and testing. All of these things are linked, and we have to think about what type of resistance is it going to take in our state. If we hold some of the largest reserves of lithium, for instance, what is it going to take to shut that down? Is it going to take people putting their bodies on the line that has been done before? Is it going to take civil disobedience? Again, we're going to follow the lead and direction of people on the ground and Native peoples, but we have to be ready and start thinking about what does that look like? And it's happening all around the globe. The examples are there around us. Standing Rock was just one, Doppel pipelines, it's happening all around us. So those are the things I wanted to say. We'll get those pictures and resources that I just spoke about out to you. Thanks so much for having me on, and I'm gonna pass it back to the host.
Thank you so much, Nathaniel. I really appreciate you. I did drop a link in about the last thing that you were talking about for folks with the Nevada movement. Thanks for grounding us too, even deeper in some of the legacies here in Nevada around organizing and what happens when we can really build people power and act on it and come together to challenge the powers that be. And I'm going to pass it over to Patrick Donnelly. We're going to talk a little bit from the perspective of, so I think Nathaniel really rooted us in people power, and so did Gary. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the realities at the Nevada State Legislature in terms of the political power that mining wields. And I'm going to let Patrick introduce himself and talk to y'all a little bit about that.
Thanks, Sarah, and hi, everybody. I'm Patrick Donnelly. I'm the Great Basin Director with the Center for Biological Diversity. We're a nationwide nonprofit. We were actually one of the plaintiffs in the original Rosemont litigation for the copper mine in Arizona that caused all the kerfuffle that we're talking about this evening. But I also am privileged enough, and I will say that I'm privileged enough to be a lobbyist at the Nevada Legislature this session, fighting for the environment every day. And, you know, being an environmental lobbyist in a resource extraction colony legislative session is not always the easiest thing to do. But I love it, and I love working with a lot of the people on this call tonight. I'm really honored to be here with Plan and with people of Red Mountain and all these other advocates who have really been on the front lines of pushing back against the abuses of the mining industry in Nevada. And at the legislature, that's just, it's the best part of being there, is working with advocates and frontline communities fighting for their rights at the legislature. But it's really hard to overstate how deeply mining is intertwined with both state level environmental regulators and with politicians in Nevada. Mining companies have literally dozens of lobbyists at the legislature right now. There's lobbyists for the Nevada Mining Association, for individual mining companies. There's even some mining guys at the legislature lobbying for themselves. And it's also not just some like vague conception, oh, lobbyists, like what's a lobbyist? It's important to look at who these people are. You know, one of the Mining Association's top lobbyists, he used to be the head of the state's Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, the agency that permits mines. And so there's this revolving door at the agencies. You work your way up in state service, you're regulating the mines, and then you jump ship and then you're lobbying for the mining industry. And it gives legislators the idea that, oh, you know, the regulators are now with industry. It must be good for the environment. Another of the Mining Association's top lobbyists, well, he used to be the lobbyist for one of the state's top environmental groups. So you're sitting there in a room with legislators in the mining industry, and the industry can say to them, well, look at us. We've got the regulators on our side. We've got the environmentalists on our side. You know, mining is green. And this sort of revolving door between industry and regulators in Nevada, and between literally environmental groups and mining industry in Nevada, it's incredibly harmful. And it gives mining companies a veneer that they're somehow beneficial for the environment, or that they're somehow a green industry. And, you know, it's not just those guys lobbying at the legislature. You know, mining also has contracts with most of the state's top lobbying firms. So these guys, they represent real estate developers, they represent local government, utilities, business associations, and yeah, most of them will have a mining company or two or three in their roster. And why does this matter? Because these super lobbyists, these sort of lobbyists in Carson City with a client list a mile long, they don't really singly represent any of them. They represent all of them. So when Joe lobbyist with the mile-long client list comes into your office as a legislator, you don't know if he's representing Mr. Friendly Mining Company or Mr. Friendly Big Pharma Company or Mr. Friendly Local Government Agency. Hell, he's probably representing all three and the other 24 entities he represents. These super lobbyists don't represent single clients. What they represent is money. They represent capital. They represent the powerful. And you can kind of swap out who their clients are and it doesn't matter. When they go into a legislator's office, there's this implicit threat that if they don't do what the super lobbyist wants, his clients and the money they represent can make a legislator's life very difficult or harm their reelection possibilities. Which of course then brings us to money. You know, we need to look at the financial aspects of the mining industry's support of politicians in Nevada. The Nevada Gold Mines, so the joint venture between Barrick and Newmont, contributed $193,500 to 47 lawmakers in the Nevada legislature during the 2022 election. That was the 5th highest total for any company in Nevada supporting legislators. That's almost $200,000 spread across the legislature. Overall mining, so that's NGM and the rest of the industry, gave over $300,000 to legislators, which means it's one of the top contributing industries in the state. And they contributed to, 61 out of 63 legislators got mining contributions. And we'll talk a little bit about who one of those excluded two were in a moment. And you know, I don't want to limit this critique to just those in the state legislature. Senator Cortez Masto, as we heard in 2022, she was the #2 politician. So that's in the Senate or Congress for taking mining cash in DC. And #3, of course, is Joe Manchin. And in fact, in the top 20 recipients of mining cash in DC, only 3 Democrats are on there: Catherine Cortez Masto, Joe Manchin, and Bob Casey of Pennsylvania. And so, you know, I think there's this idea, well, mining is a Republican endeavor and only Republicans support mines and mining only supports Republicans. But we can just see that's not true, especially in Nevada. You know, the mining industry gave to 61 out of 63 legislators in a majority Democrat Nevada legislature. Nevada's senior senator is a top recipient of mining catch, and she's a Democrat. So it's sort of, it doesn't matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans, you know, they'll take mining's money regardless. And I think, again, we can see at the federal level, you know, who's pushing the buttons with this legislation that Cortez Masto just introduced. Well, again, we have to look at the super lobbyists. There's a lobbying firm, Cassidy and Associates, with a former Reed staffer, Harry Reed staffer, in charge of it, and they represent Barrick and Newmont, and they also represent environmental groups. You've got Raffaello and Associates, who represents the National Mining Association, and they also represent environmental groups. And so you have this kind of bizarre coalescing where these lobbyists and the money they represent, you know, it sort of doesn't matter whether it's mining or environment, you know, you're just representing money. And I think that is really the root of the problem when it comes to politicians like Catherine Cortez Masto and taking actions that are so obviously at the behest of the mining industry and the money that industry represents. And so this all sounds doom and gloom, but actually there's definitely reason for hope. And I think we heard a bunch from our earlier speakers, from Gary and Nathaniel, about what people power looks like and about how we can resist this accumulation of power and money in industry and the politicians. And I think we had a really great example of that this legislative session. We're in the middle of this great example. And Sarah's going to tell you a little bit about Assembly Bill 313 and the kind of glimmer of hope that's provided for people power outweighing all of that power and money from mining and the struggle that's currently going on at the legislature.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Thanks for keeping it real and really laying it out, what it looks like to be up in Carson City, and a little bit of what it looks like to be in DC with these issues. Erica, will you go to the next slide for me? Okay, so Patrick was talking about Assembly Bill 313 or AB 313. It is, we mostly just call it, like folks on the Nevada Mining Reform Coalition, we kind of call it the Pit Lake Bill, but it is a lot more than that. It is crucial. It's a crucial bill for water reclamation and conservation in the state of Nevada. So I just want to re-emphasize that this is specific to Nevada. This is not federal legislation that we're pushing through. This is at our legislature in Carson City. So on the left side of your screen, you'll see a picture of a pit lake. It's a picture that I took when I was visiting in October of last year. So this is the Anaconda Pit Lake. So this is a legacy of the Anaconda mine, which is in Yerington, Nevada. Some of you, just as a side note, may be familiar with the fact that the Yerington Paiute tribe had to have bottled water delivered to them for, I believe, a little over a decade because of the toxic water that they were exposed to. And then there's this legacy of toxic water is kind of twofold, because on one hand, they have this toxic pit of water, and then the other hand, they have the toxic mine waste that was just dumped, leaching into their groundwater and poisoning their water. So it's just another example of how when the mining industry goes unchecked, they're putting so much at risk, but one specific thing that they're really putting at risk is water. And it's not just their water use, but it's also water contamination. And so one big way that the industry wastes and pollutes water here in Nevada is through something called a pit lake. A pit lake is exactly what you see there. And you probably can see too the shelves. And that's very reminiscent of that picture of the Marigold mine that I pointed out earlier, those like 50-foot shelves. So you can see it's not really a lake at all. It's really just like, oftentimes it's like a toxic sludge, but it is, what used to be there before the water started coming back in was the pit. That is the pit in which the mining company was digging up their ore to make profit from, and then they left and didn't clean up their mess. So what ends up happening is sometimes the mining company needs to dig below the water table in order to get the ore that they're trying to extract for profit. And they will pump this water, they'll pump the groundwater out in order to keep the pit dry for their operations. This will happen for decades as they're going through their practices. And once they are done and they got what they needed, and they leave their big mess, they turn their big pumps off that are sucking out the water to keep the pit dry, And ultimately what happens is that groundwater, the water table, tries to replenish itself. And so slowly over time, this water rises up and will fill into this pit. And this is one example of a pit lake here in Nevada. It is one of many. It is probably one of the more famous ones. But so this is basically, I think one way I like to talk to people about it is that this is water that should still be groundwater. And now it has no other use. It is just sitting. What we often say at the Nevada Mining Reform Coalition is like water that is basically just like locked up in these pits. It is, yeah, it's the only thing the mining industry has to do is put these, like you can see this pretty wimpy fence around it. It doesn't keep all animals out. It doesn't even necessarily keep all people out. And so the thing is that mine pit lakes are avoidable. We don't need to have them. The industry just does what's easy and walks away. And so what this legislation would do, which is, again, this is legislation that is put forward by the Nevada Mining Reform Coalition, thanks to Sarah Peters, who is the bill sponsor. She's a representative in Washoe County up in Reno. So this bill seeks to ensure that there are no new pit lakes in the state of Nevada by requiring the mining industry to backfill their pits. And it also requires the addition of water reclamation to some of our state regulations around what the mining industry does or doesn't have to do when they're done their operations. And so I want to talk more too about actually if we can drop the links in for the SALSA action and then the sign up, that would be great. Thank you. So another thing that I just want to highlight about this bill is Patrick mentioned, there's some hope. And so I just want to set the scene a little bit for where this bill has been so far this legislative session. So we really, to be honest, we knew, like, you all have heard what we're up against, okay? The mining industry does not want this bill. They do not want to be impeded in their plans for profit and their ability to just get away with whatever they want, which includes polluting and not cleaning up and not having to pay anybody for it, just getting to profit from it. So we fought really hard and organized really hard to even have a hearing for this bill. And a lot of us just felt like we just want to be heard. Like, it would be a win to just be heard, because this is an issue that more people in Nevada need to realize. So that if you care about water justice in Nevada, and especially here in the South, where we're really like working to try to conserve water, then you need to care about pit lakes, because it's a thing that should not exist. And it is a horrible legacy on the land that is leaving generational impacts and taking away water resources for our grandchildren. So we didn't think we were going to get a hearing, and we did. And we had a really amazing, successful hearing. Our side, the folks who were in support of AB 313, we had a diverse coalition of people who wrote in, many who are probably on this call. They wrote in, they called in, they showed up in person to Vegas and Elko and in Carson City, and they gave their comment to the Assembly Natural Resources Committee to let them know that this bill is about water. That is the bottom line. If there's anything you need to know about AB 313, it is about protecting our water. It is really that simple. And that is the message that we got across in that hearing. And when it came time for the opposition to speak, every single person who was in opposition was a paid mining industry executive from all of the top mining companies in the state of Nevada. So that is another example in which we can see what happens when we mobilize our power together, and we're stronger together, and when we are together in our values. And in this case, our value was water and water justice. And so after that hearing, we ended up actually getting a work session for the bill, which basically just means that the committee comes back, and if there's amendments or not, they kind of discuss that, and they decide, okay, are we going to pass this bill out of committee to go to the assembly floor to go through the rest of the process or not? And this was another layer where we had to do a huge push. We had to organize legislators on this committee. There was a handful of them who are Democrats, who needed to be pushed a little, who needed to hear from their constituents and concerned people who are on the front lines of mining and who are just generally, all of us in Nevada are on the front lines of water justice at this point. We are the driest state in the nation. And so we organized folks to call their offices, have meetings with the legislators, do this action, this SALSA action that Cassie dropped in the chat. And the bill passed out of the work session. And so, and then we had another win. And so it went to the assembly floor and it went into now the current status of the bill is that it is an assembly committee of ways and means. And so we are going to need a lot of people power here too, because there are some extra powerful people who sit on assembly ways and means who do have a little more control over if this bill moves forward or not. And so we had to make sure we mentioned AB 313 on this call because it is something that's happening right now in Nevada in our legislative session that has already been able to move forward thanks to people power. But I'm here to say that it's going to require a lot more people power to keep the bill moving. And so please see the links in the chat. Please sign up to stay involved and to learn more about this. And if you have any questions about the bill, please feel free to reach out. Let me check oh yeah, and this was what is the next step after Ways and Means? Okay, so Leslie asked, what is the next step after Ways and Means? Oh, Erica, will you pause the video? The next step would be, we are trying to get it to pass out of the Ways and Means Committee. And so if we can get it to pass out of Ways and Means, that would then mean the next step is it goes back to the assembly floor to vote. And if then we would need to get it out of the assembly and it would then move to the Senate. So next step is getting a committee hearing again for the bill, but this time it would be in Assembly Ways and Means. And so that's kind of like our immediate next steps. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, cool. Okay, and then we do have a video that explains what a pit lake is, maybe better than I did, but I think we can drop the link in the chat just for the sake of time. It's a great documentary. Tainted Thirst is a documentary that was done with Plan and Great Basin Resource Watch and some other folks. And this, I think it's like 2 minutes long, is a really great explanation of what a pit lake is. And also goes more into, if you're interested in the issues with the Anaconda pit lake, definitely if you're interested in water justice and mining justice and Indigenous rights and all these nexuses of things, Tainted Thirst is a great documentary to watch, and it was homemade. It was here made in Nevada, so definitely check it out. Okay, we can go to the next slide. If it lets you. I don't know what the secret is. Oh no. Okay, there we go. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions before we move on to NEJC stuff? Okay, I don't think I'm seeing anything in the Q&A, so I think we can move on. So I'm going to pass it to Olivia. Olivia is a program manager here at Plan, the Environmental Justice Program Manager, and she also sits on the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition in multiple capacities, and I will let Olivia take the rest away.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I just wanted to talk briefly about the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition. So the NEJC, or Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition, is a coalition of 14 different organizations based here in Nevada, most of which are base building and community engagement organizations that focus on the intersections of climate, environmental issues, health, and justice. So for this reason, the NEJC supports mining justice efforts led by our member organizations, including GBRW and Plan, among others. We know that there are a lot of people here in Nevada who care about conservation, outdoor recreation, and environmental health, but the NEJC really seeks to ensure that people who are most impacted by environmental issues, like pollution of air or water, or having to work in extreme heat, are protected and centered in the environmental fight. So I guess to continue on the train of hope and ways that we can take action at the state level, this legislative session, the NEJC had 4 top priority bills, in addition to offering support to other bills like AB 313 that Sarah just talked about. So I'm listing these bills of examples of what the broader fight for environmental justice looks like in Nevada, specifically focusing on this legislative session. I guess I'll talk first about AJR 3, otherwise known as the Green Amendment. The Green Amendment sought to guarantee a constitutional right to a clean environment in our state's constitution. It was a visionary bill also carried by Assemblywoman Peters, who, as Patrick noted in the chat, is one of very few legislators who didn't take any mining money this last campaign cycle. The Green Amendment is an idea that has been passed and instituted in other states. And one thing to note is that in other states, it has been used to stop or at least do harm reduction for large scale industry projects like mining. Unfortunately, because of the political power that mining has and that other industries have, this bill died in committee and won't be moving any further this session. AB 71 is a bill that would commission an environmental justice study that would examine who is impacted by environmental issues, how they're impacted, and recommend solutions. This bill did pass out of committee, out of Assembly Natural Resources, and is at this point in time still alive. AB 312 would create an environmental justice council here in Nevada that would be composed of directly impacted community members and would be able to secure and track federal funding for environmental justice communities, among other things. This bill is still alive and well. It was just referred to Ways and Means, but it does still need continued community support and engagement. And then lastly, SB 427 is a bill that seeks to protect people who work in extreme smoke from wildfires or extreme heat. We know that as the climate crisis worsens, so too will wildfires and extreme heat waves, and people will still have to work in those conditions. So this bill seeks to make working conditions safe for workers by passing common sense solutions, things like breaks and guarantees of water, shade, just simple things to improve people's workplace and to improve safety on the job. I say all of this again to highlight environmental justice efforts at the state level in Nevada. Because of the power of opposition from mining and other industries, people power in these pushes is extremely critical, extremely important, as Sarah and everybody else has talked about, and are an opportunity to help move environmental justice efforts forward at the state level, in addition to the federal fight that we're talking about tonight. So there are multiple ways to engage, both at the very local level, at the state level with the session that is going on right now, and at the federal level with this new really harmful bill that Catherine Cortez Masto has introduced. And so these are all different opportunities for us to flex the power that we hold as community members here in the state, and to demand that our decision makers are held accountable, both to passing these good bills and then also to stopping these bad ones that we know were co-written with industry. So I think that's all that I'm going to touch on, but thank you all for being here tonight.
Thanks so much, Olivia. I appreciate that. And I don't know if somebody wants to drop in the chat, like the Instagram and Twitter handles for the NEJC. Those are good ways to follow the amazing work that coalition is doing, and to keep track of the bills and requests for support on some of these bills as they start to move more forward, hopefully. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, and then I'm gonna pass it to Fitz to talk a little bit about next steps. We had a lot of information today. This is being recorded too, and so I think it will go out to all of those who signed up. So if there's anything you want to go back to, you can. But I hope we drove home the point that we really need people power right now in the face of where we're at in history. And so we do have a couple immediate actions for next steps, and Fitz will talk about that.
Hi all, for those that don't know me, my name is Danielle Fitzgerald. I work at Plan alongside Sarah and Olivia and others on this call. But I want to thank you for joining us in this moment to get informed on this issue. But an important piece in our response, just to echo what everyone else has emphasized on this call, is that we're getting other people in our state to take action so that the senator understands how Nevadans feel about her decision to support and prioritize the mining industry over the communities that are impacted by them. So this Thursday at our Plan Las Vegas and Reno offices, we will be calling other Nevadans to contact the senator's office. We will be blowing up her phone. We, like other folks have said, we need this people power because otherwise our silence gives the message that we will tolerate this violence and this destruction in our state. So in order to join us on Thursday, folks only need your phone and a device like a laptop or iPad that can access the internet. And we will provide all of the resources, all of the training. So whether or not you've done this kind of thing before or you've phone banked, you can help us create more noise that more than what we would do on our own. If you're not able to join us on person on Thursday or at this time, please get in contact with Sarah about how you can help from home or wherever you are, because we definitely need as many people as possible to get Catherine Cortez Masto's attention. So if we haven't already, let's drop the link to this Mobilize action. So whether or not you can join us, or if you aren't able to join us, if you can share this link out with people that you know, all of that would be appreciated. And I will throw it back to Sarah.
Thanks so much, Fitz. I appreciate that. Let's see, somebody did just ask if folks were on KNPR from NEJC talking about these issues, and actually I just dropped the link. Also, I don't know if folks, what it looks like on the webinars end, but there are, as questions are being answered, they're going right into the answered section of the chat. So make sure you check that out for the questions that have been answered throughout this. But I did just drop a link. Laura Martin, our executive director, and Cynthia Moore were just recently on KNPR, actually just like last week. They didn't talk really a ton about the mining issues, but I think we definitely need to bring more attention to the mining issues, so I appreciate that. But if you are interested in watching that, the link is there. Okay, I'm gonna open it for any other questions. I don't think I see any other ones. Let's see. Okay, will there be a toolkit or talking points for folks to use when calling CCM? At what point would we want to get a hold of other reps? Those are really great questions, Leslie. Thanks for asking them. Yes, there will be a toolkit and there will be like a script of how to, so we're not just throwing y'all to the wolves and like call CCM and good luck. We'll definitely do like a little mini training if you come to the Vegas and Reno offices. And then I think, I know, Leslie, that you are in not that close to Reno. And so we did talk a little bit about providing these toolkits to folks who are maybe in more rural areas. And so if you wanted to gather folks and do it, or if you wanted to do it yourself, so we're more than happy to share that material with you all as well. If you can't come in person to Reno or Vegas, so just please holler at us for that. And at what point would we want to get a hold of other reps? So we also, I think right now we are targeting Catherine Cortez Masto, but as I noted earlier, this is being co-sponsored by our other Senator Jackie Rosen. And so that is to be seen. I think if you want to do a little Twitter action, if you're on Twitter, and just express your discontent, senators do look at that stuff and use it as like a smaller level thing, but it does help gain attention and traction in the social media world around these issues that we're concerned about. And so that is to be seen. And then in terms of other representatives, I think what we are hoping to do is to be in community with folks who are in Idaho and Arizona, where their senators are also sponsoring and leading this bill, and making sure that we are in community, in solidarity with the communities who are on the front lines of mining in those states, and also the organizations and groups that support those folks, and thinking about a stronger presence of solidarity. And so as these things are progressing, we'll definitely keep folks engaged in whatever ways pop up as we can continue to mount some pressure and build some more power. Thanks so much, Justin. I appreciate your kind words. And it looks like Rain's hand is up. So I don't know how this works with webinar mode, but I don't know if Rain is able to like unmute themselves or how we have to do that. But I want Rain to be able to ask their question unless their hand was up by accident. But I just want to make sure that gets addressed. I don't know. Rain, maybe.
Rain, you should have access to unmute.
Oh, accident. Okay, Rain says it was accident. Okay, sorry, Rain. Thanks for letting us know. Okay, does anybody else have any other questions about 1872 mining law, about this bill that was introduced by CCM today, and others, or AB 313, or any of the things? Any questions for folks from people at Red Mountain? Okay. All right, y'all. Well, again, this was recorded. We will definitely send a follow-up email with the recording and the links that were dropped in the chat. If you have any other questions, I think if you go to the next slide, I might have my information on there if I can remember correctly. Yep, there it is. Okay, so just a reminder, y'all, we are fighting for mining justice now. It is more urgent than ever, given the political world that we are in and calls for a just energy transition. We need to make sure that the energy transition is actually just and that it's not built on the backs of Native people. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or you want to talk about this. I could talk about it all day if you can't tell. That is my email. I'm happy to connect you with any of my colleagues as well. Again, I'm also part of the Nevada Mining Reform Coalition, which is home to lots of amazing groups, some of which you've heard from today, such as Patrick from Center for Biological Diversity, Gary from People of Red Mountain. So please feel free to reach out and we will follow up with you all and send that recording out. And if that is it, hopefully we'll see you all on Thursday for some phone banking, letting CCM know that this is completely unacceptable, that when we ask for mining reform, this is not what we meant. This is not what we meant. So I think I will end with that. Appreciate everyone. I hope you have a great night. Thank you.
Have a good evening, everybody.